we can start taping ourselves. So the first is the amount of money. The second is the time period that we have to pay the loan. Why the time period is important?
So you know when you pay it on time.
If you want the loan,
rate.
if you want the loan to be for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to give you a loan for 4 years, what is the main difference that we actually discussing behind the time?
The interest rate.
But let's agree with the interest rate. Let's say that the rate of the loan can be given. Let's make it 6%. Is the time making any impact to the dollar picture of the loan?
Yes.
What is it?
Because you need.
Why you want 5 years and why I want 4 years?
So
What do you win by 5 years? But if you win, I lose. And what I win with 4 years, but if we take it for 4 years and I win, you lose.
save your money.
This is the question I want you to think. This is the answer I want you to give me. You can go through the book or all the books. You don't have the answer. Do you have brains? If you have a brain, we can be able to find it. Let's go on and we can agree. You can have it for 5 years. How do you pay a loan for a car? Every year or every month?
Every year.
Good. The first chapter of the loan gives it to you in annual terms. Now I'm going to go on and I will put it paid monthly. If it's paid monthly, do we want the payment to be at the beginning of the month or at the end of the month?
The ending.
Hmm? What?
The ending.
Okay. At the end of the month. Is this clear? And we have the rate. If we have all that stuff, then we need to figure out a few more things. What do we need to figure out?
How much it's gonna cost.
Before you go, how much it's going to cost? What do we need to figure out? Okay, Sultan. Good. Say it loud so that everybody will hear it, including Kenya.
We need to know how much we pay each month.
Okay, we need to know how much money we'll pay every month. I will make it a graph. This much amount, this much amount, this much amount, this much amount goes on through all the period. So by the end of 5 years and 12 months would be paid. In Africa, I suppose the time goes differently than in America. But if you pay, I receive. Whatever payment you make, it's going to be my inflow. Clear? And how we will know that we have a fair deal. And you will feel that I don't cheat you, and I will feel that I get back my money. And that's not in the book. I told you about that last Tuesday. Can we give forgiveness to the late coming from Africa if he gives us an answer? How do we know that we have a fair deal?
If the present value of our payments.
What did he say? Loud.
If the present value.
I know. What did he say?
It's the present value.
The present value of what?
I didn't hear the rest.
Okay, so didn't hear. What did you say? Louder.
If the present value of our payments are equal to.
Good. What did he say?
If the present value is equal to the principal?
Good. Repetition is the only way that allows you to learn what you have. Otherwise, you have to Google it or you have to look at your notes. But you don't need to have the notes. So I need to graph it. I will take this value here and I will bring it to the present time. I will take this value here and I will bring it to the present time. I will take this value here and I'll bring it to the present time. I'll keep doing the same thing. I'll take this value here and I'll bring it to the present time. I'll take this value and bring it to the present time. I'll take this value and I will bring it to the present time. And after that, how do you do in Africa? And after that, you take all this amount and you sum them up. This is how much you pay in order to get this amount of money. When would you feel that is a fair deal? Okay.
After the full fee?
You get 30,000. How much do you want to pay back?
How much?
Do you want to pay back?
The whole thing, but in a month,
One step at a time. You received 30,000 today. I gave you 30,000 today. What I want to do, the future payments that I will have, I want to see them how much that would be today that I give you the money. I will bring all these values to the present time and I will sum them up. I gave you 30,000. How much do I want to get back? And in Africa, we keep our mouths shut, except if we're asked. But in Brooklyn, we talk. Yes?
You want to get back your principal plus interest.
And that's my question. Do I want to get back 30,000? Do I want to get 30,000?
And a profit.
Or I want to get 30,000 plus more?
okay.
And I will test if democracy works. So, I'm putting it to a vote. Option A, you get 30,000 only. Option B, you get 30,000 plus more. Who is voting for Victor? B. I want to listen to see. Who is-
If I'm the borrower, I would pick A.
From the lender perspective.
If I'm the
Yeah.
lender, I would go for B.
Yeah, but if we have a fair deal, whatever is fair for her needs to be fair for me. And there is no in between. It's either one or the other. And I want to test if democracy works. So who is voting for option B? Hands up, you count. How many people vote for B? And all of you have to vote. So there is no one who is going to say, I'm not voting.
It's going up or down?
I don't know. So 11 people vote for B.
12.
11 people vote for B.
12.
Who is voting for A?
She's voting.
Who is voting for A? Who is abstaining? Who is abstaining? No one is abstaining. Anybody votes for A? Okay. Nobody votes for A and nobody abstains. How many are total? How many are total votes?
11.
How many people I have in class? So I have 13 people in class, right? Do I have 13 or?
I don't know, I just get.
I know, count. In finance, you count.
13.
12. We got 12.
He was out. She just came back.
Okay, but do you want to vote? You don't count. You have how many? 12?
Well,
Okay, I have 12 people in class, 11 people voted, which means the person who did not vote needs to drop the class. That was you.
No, I did want it. Did you count?
Yeah.
You did, right?
No, you didn't raise your hand loud.
I should have done it like this.
Yeah, like this. So, are you right or wrong?
I mean,
Right.
That means that she needs to pay more than $30,000.
yeah.
If I want to receive more than $30,000, she needs to pay more than $30,000. Is this your case in your book? That's my question, and we'll test it in a minute. Now, before we go to that question, let's take out a little bit the democracy. Let's take out the democracy and see what is going on with the alternatives that we have.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You said it was better if,
Can you speak louder?
yeah, you said it was better if the lender had the 4 years instead of the 5 years.
That is my question. You have to give me an answer to that question.
Wouldn't it be better 5 years because you're accruing more interest?
You will find out. That's what we are going to do. I'm posing questions here. We're going to get answers soon. Then we have something here. We calculated the payments. We calculated the payments. In your book, do you have the book? In your book, do you have a book? Okay, page what? 120? Kenya, you stay there. In your book. Kenya, you don't need water, you need a book.
I don't have my book with me.
Why? In your book, on page 128, 129, in your book on page 128 and 129, you have something that is important. You have what is this function in Excel. You have the payment function in Excel. This is on 128. And then on page 129, you have two more things. You have your payment that goes for interest and the payment that goes for the principal. On page 129, it gives you two more functions, right, Victor? Oh.
Yeah.
I don't want you to think so. Either it gives you or it doesn't give you.
Yes, yes, it does.
We are not talking about creative writing or imaginative literature. And if you add these two parts, you get your payment. Clear? That's 128, 129. The numbers are the same. Do you see the numbers?
So yeah. And
Are the same or different? The numbers are the same. Analysts are the same. The numbers are the same. But the way you calculate it is different. On page 129, you use Excel formulas. On page 128, you make your own calculations. And if you make your own calculations, then I want you to tell me how I would calculate this information, Kenya. The interest on the loan that you pay as part of the payment, how is it calculated? And I don't want that for Kenya, I want for all of you. How do you calculate the interest on the payment? how do I calculate the interest on the payment? Good. Say it loud so they can tape you there and we can hear your voice. One person can pass. Okay, that means 11 people or 12 people will fail. One person said what? I'll need to hear it.
You multiply the principal times the interest rate.
You multiply the rate to the amount of the principal that you owe at that particular time. You make the multiplication. Or in other words, this part is related to what is the rate and what is the principal. Not at the beginning of the period, but how much is the remaining of the principal every particular point of the loan. Is this clear? And then, if this is coming from these two, and if these two are added together to give you the payment, if you know one, you can be able to figure out the other. Or in other words, if you know how much is your payment, and you calculate how much is the interest for the payment, the principal for the payment, what it goes to the principal from the payment is equal to what? What is your payment minus what you paid for the interest for the payment part. Clear? And this is more or less what it goes on to calculate the loan. And it comes to the last period of the loan. And at the last period of the loan, I want to be sure that the payment that I have makes the principal completely paid. In order to have the principal completely paid, what I need to do is I need this part from the loan to be as much as everything is paid. And if everything is paid, you do not owe anything more. What is the number that says you paid everything?
0.
0. Is this clear? So that's what it happens with a loan. And this is what you have on page 128, 129. And the important thing is not to write it only on your notebook, but to put it in your brain. And if this is the case, I want to go to page 125 and 126. What is on 125 and 126? 125 and 126. In one case, you pay an equal amount throughout all the periods. In the second case, you take how much is the principal and you split the principal proportionally to all the periods that you have, and this amount is fixed. And you pay a fixed amount from the principal throughout all the periods. In other words, this amount here now is fixed. Does not come from a subtraction but comes from a division. And that is what you have in your book as the second period, 126. This is what you have, 127, 128. And then you go on to the first case. And in the first case, you pay only interest. And what is happening to the principal? You pay the principal at the end. You pay the principal at the end. And we have the three cases that we have first. And after we do that, we can go on and make a few more modifications. And the modification is, if we have an equal payment, if we have an equal payment, the book says we can pay less than the payment. But the book does not say what would happen if you can be able to pay more than the payment. And I want you to know what is happening if you can pay more than the payment. Any ideas?
If you can pay more than the payment.
Yeah. Let's say that every month you pay, the payment is $400, and you can afford, and you want to pay $500 rather than $400. What is going to happen?
You pay it off quicker.
Good, you pay it off quicker. Do you have any advantage of doing it?
Pay less interest.
Less interest.
You pay less interest, and that's your advantage. That's why you want to do it. Now you gave me an answer to the previous question I asked. The previous question I asked was, do you want to pay in 5 years or you want to pay it in 4 years? And you said if you pay it faster, you pay less interest on that amount. Clear? If you pay less than the payment, you have the payment, and I go here, you have the payment. The payment has two parts. One part is going for interest, and the other is going for the principal. We have a case that you may pay only for interest. You may have to pay only for interest. This way, you pay the principal at the end. Do you pay more money in that case or less money in that case? You have to pay more money for that particular period. And these are things that I want you to check. Then you have few more cases in the book. You pay less than the payment. If you pay the interest on the payment only, if you pay the interest on the payment only, do you have that case in your book? Do you have this case in the book? Analyst says that's the first case that you have here. This is the case that you pay interest on the loan only, and you pay everything else at the end. And I would go to two more cases. Can you pay every period less than what is the interest that you have to pay?
If they allow it, sure.
Can you do it?
Yes.
Why I should allow it? You get the loan, I give you the loan. Why I should allow it? She said something important. Do I make more money or not?
Yeah.
How do I find out if I make more money or not? If I make more money, you pay more money. Right? Why do you want to do it? You get a loan, I give you the loan. If you want to pay less than the interest payment, she said that I'm gonna make more money. If I make more money, she's paying me more, right? Why you want to do it?
That's assuming
Yeah?
At the time, so you don't have to pay as much right now.
Why do you want to do it? Why do you want to pay more money?
You have to pay less at
What?
the end.
We need the money right now.
Say it loud.
We need the money right now.
Because you use that money at that particular time, and it's like increasing the amount of the loan that you have, and you do business so you will be able to pay everything at the end.
Oh, right. This is
That's why I would agree to do it, and he will use the money. It's like increasing the amount of loan throughout the period of the loan.
You gave us an example last week of your former student.
Okay, and we have more or less all the case, up to the last case of the book. And the last case of the book is you don't pay anything throughout the period, and at the end, you pay everything. In other words, what is happening here? We change the story. You do not pay anything. And I do not receive anything. You don't pay anything, and I do not receive anything. Except at the end. At the end, Kenya is paying me more money, and I receive more money. When that case is fair. Page 25 gives you that idea. That's on chapter 2. Did you understand that? Yes or no? What is on page 25?
Saving for college, a college loan.
What is on page 25?
Right.
Is it 25 or it's not on page 25. It's not on page 25, it's page 45. No, it's page 45. What is on page 45? The bullet loan. What is the page on 45? On page 45, you have whatever we graph here. 45. On page 45, we have what we graph here. What do we have here? You get the loan now. After given periods, you pay everything once. Interest plus the principal. I give you the loan now. After given periods, I get everything at once. Is this clear? Is this on page 45 of your book? What is on page 45 on your book? In page 45 of your book, it says that if you have a value for 3 years, the present value and the future value are related in such a way that the present value in 3 years gives you that future value if you know the time and the rate. And in page 45, it gives you the time is 3 years and the rate is 8%. If it is the same, what do? The last example that we have in the book about a bullet loan, which is what? You get a loan now. Kenya got $30,000. Now, in 3 years, she pays everything. I give her $30,000 now. In 3 years, I get everything. My question is, how much do I get in 3 years? What do you need to calculate? What do you need to calculate? You need to calculate the future value. The future value is the $30,000 multiplied with 1 plus the interest rate, which is 1.8 to the power of how many years? This is what she will pay after 3 years. This is what I will get after 3 years. Altogether. Yes.
What's in the parentheses, Professor?
1.08. What is in the parentheses? 1, what I have, plus the rate of the loan to the power of the time. Is this clear? This is how everything we know so far is connected, and this is what I want you to be able to do it. And I want you to have clear in your mind by this week, not by next week. And I would allow you to have your book and your notes open when I give you a test. If I don't see you going on and do it right away, and I see you looking at your books and notes, etc., I would know that you don't know it and you're not comfortable. And if you don't know it and you're not comfortable, you're not going to do work. If you know it, you can go on and do it. Now I want to go to the next chapter. The next chapter is exactly the same as this one, with one only modification. What is the modification that I have there? What is the modification that I have there in the next chapter? I use the formula. What is the formula that I use? Future value formula for the years. But I want to get a loan for the months. So what is happening? If the loan is given for months, is anything different? Or it's everything the same? I'm asking you, what do I need to clean? I need to clean here. Victor,
Yes, sir.
if I have 1 year, this is annual. And if I want to think the loan paid in monthly terms, or I will go a step. I will have the loan paid in quarterly terms. I'll have the loan paid in monthly terms. I'll have the loan paid in bi-weekly terms. I will have the loan paid in weekly terms. I would have the loan paid in daily terms, so on and so forth. Do I change what is happening in a year? No. What do I do? Here I pay it once. Here I pay once. If I pay quarterly, I'll pay 4 times. When I have to pay 4 times, then the question is, do I pay before the quarter or after the quarter? Again, this is something that we know from before. If we pay before the quarter, we pay here, 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 and here. Blue. If I pay after the quarter, I pay here, 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 and here. Black. The calculations would be different, but would be 4 different payments. Clear? If I don't pay in quarters and I pay in months, what is happening? How many months do I have in a quarter? 3. How many months I have in a year? 12. I have 4 quarters. If I pay in weeks. How many weeks do I have in a year? In a year. How many weeks I have in a year? How many 2-week periods I have in a year?
26.
Why do I need to have things calculated in 2 weeks period?
Because that's when you get your paycheck.
So if I want my loan to be subtracted out of my paycheck and I don't want to have anything to bother with it, I'll make it in bi-weekly periods. But if someone else is paid in month, you can get it in monthly pay. If I want to have it in days, I need 365 days. And I can pay every day. Like what? I was coming to school today, I was listening to the public radio, and they said, be a sustainable member. Meaning what? Give them some money. And give them the money the easy way. Every month, they want $10. Or every month, they want $20. Or every month, they want $5. Or every day, they want $1. It does not matter what is going on, because you have exactly the same period. But the period is split. How many periods do we have? If all of these are the sub-periods, and I will say my sub-periods are M, and my years are N, then the number of years multiplied with the sub-periods is the periods that I am paying for the loan. What did I use here? Multiplication. What do I have? I have the time period. What is the time period? The time period is here. I will substitute the way I will write the time period. Instead of having the time period as one thing, now I have the number of years multiplied to the number of sub-periods. What did I use? I use a multiplication. But I want to keep everything the same, balanced, constant. What is the opposite operation to the multiplication? Kenya says division, therefore I need to divide. If I multiply a term with an M, I divide the rate by an M. And this is the effective rate for the sub-period. And this is the effective rate for the sub-period. And that's the new idea that I have in the next chapter. Everything else is the same, but I want you to remember all the everything else. And if you remember all the everything else, we need to know what is going to happen with my case here. What did I say? I get 30,000 loan, and I want it for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, how much we want. And I want you to calculate if there is any difference between the time period. We want the loan to be fair. Fair for the Kenya that gets it, fair for me that I give her the loan, which means as much money she pays, that much money she gets. As much money I give her, that much money I take in present value. And now let's go to the question that you all vote, and you have to pay more. Do you really pay more? Or not? And I want you to look at your book. From last week to this week, we went and we read what is happening in the book. Can you tell me which page in the book tells you that you pay more and how much?
131.
which page tells you that you pay more and how much? $131 is the balloon loan. Let's go on.
Oh, no. 132, the bullet loan.
$132, the bullet loan. The bullet loan is the last case. You pay everything at the end. We said page 132, 133, you pay everything at the end, is similar to page 45, or not? Okay, and you said yes. In other words, page 45 and page 133, they are telling you exactly the same thing. It tells you the present value and the future value are exactly the same. What page 133 is telling you? Go to page 133. Page 133 tells you that $100,000 for 10 years and 8% is $225. And $225 after 10 years for 8% is $100 today. Is this the case? And I want to know, is this the case or not? And if I would give that to you as a problem, I need to know what is happening. What is on page 133 or on page 44? On page 44 is if you have a given value, and if you have a given period, and you have a given rate. You have the present value, and you have a given period, and you have a given rate. Then the future value is equal to, and I said that I want everything being formatted nice. The future value is equal to, and I want Victor to calculate it on his own. The future value is the present value compounded. And I want you to tell me what is compounded. Compounded is when you take the money that you have and you add your return rate, and that part goes that many times in circles as your period that you have. If I click it here, do I get whatever is on page 133 or not? Do I get whatever I have on page 133 or not? Go to your book. Bullet loan. What do you calculate? Bullet loan. What do you calculate? What is your book? 133. What do you calculate?
Calculate how much you have to pay here.
Is this correct?
You said the negative?
Yeah. It's 45.
Is this exactly what you have?
Yes.
Which means $215 and
That's right.
892.5 for 10 years, and 8% is the same as $100 today. That's the bullet loan. What do I want you to do? I want you to be able to make connections of the material that we cover. In other words, the bullet loan is not anything different than what you had before. You know it, yes.
So after 10 years, you pay that
I don't know.
correct?
I don't know. Good, if you believe so, and if you know so, and if you are absolutely certain that this is the case, this is what you have. And now I have a question for you. 11 people from the class told me that I pay more. That's what you voted, right? You counted. 11 people said that you paid more. What did you pay more?
If you take more time, you pay more. If you change 10 to 11, it's going to be a higher number.
Okay, I want to change things from page 133 to page 44. Is anything different in page 44? Let's go on and do the other way around. What do I have? I take this amount of money and I discount it with whatever I have plus the rate to the power of the time. What do I get here? If I click it, what number I will get?
It should be the same as B2. It should be the principal.
100,000.
Correct.
100,000.
That means that I have a fair deal, which says that page 44, what is on page 44?
Present value.
What is on page 44? Same or different stuff? On page 44, do I have the same stuff or different stuff? On page 44, I have
Well, yeah, you have the same calculation for
I have the same information. I have different numbers. On page 144, I have $100.
Well, yeah, because you have the present
I
value.
have 3 years,
Yes, yes,
and I have 6%. This is what I have on page 44. So don't tell me that 44 and 133 are different things. They are the same thing. My question is, what do I pay more? If on page 44 you know that the future value is related to the present value, and if the fair deal is $100 today, in 3 years is $119.10, or $119.10 3 years from now for 6% is $100 today, then it's equal. Do you pay more or not? Do you pay more or not?
Because it's the same present value.
Do you pay more or not?
No.
No, you don't. So you were wrong. Whenever you get a loan, you don't pay more. You pay the same present value. And that's not in your book, but this is what I want you to know. And that's in no book that I ever saw. And I saw several books, more or less all of them. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? Can you tell me?
For what?
For the chapters about the loan.
Study them.
Study means that you put them in your brain. On chapter 4, it tells you what is going on with a loan. Kenya knows it, right? You know it or not? You put it up there. What do you do for the loan? What is happening in chapter 5? Chapter 4 tells you what is going on. Chapter 4 tells you what's going on in a loan. In chapter 5, what do you do? In chapter 5, what do you do?
You talk about work. You talk about cost.
And I want to go to page 1 157. That gives you points. Let's go on to that case without the points. On page 157, what do you have? Do you see the Excel setting that you have there? Do you have the Excel setting that you have there? 157. What do you see on page 157?
You see, what do you see?
I want you all to go to your Excel. I want you all to go to your Excel. And I'm going to put it here, exactly the same that is in your book. I borrow $100,000. And I have points. For my case now, I will put, I don't have to bother about points. This is chapter 4. And I have an interest rate. The interest rate is 8%. The interest rate is 8%. And I want to deal with that for 10 years. And if I want to deal with that for 10 years, I want to find out what is my payment. I use my payment function. I go on to financial and I use my payment. Do we know how to use the payment? The previous chapter told me what is a payment. The payment is, what is the rate? The rate is before. The payment says, what is the time period? The number of the periods are 10. And the payment says, how much is the present value of that particular loan that I have to give it to you. That's why it's minus. It comes out of me, so it's going to be in you. This is the amount of the payment. This is what I have. Is this in your book? Is this in your book?
Yes.
Good. If this is in your book, then I would go and see how I will calculate for the particular periods that I have here. And I want you to pay attention. Look at page 157.
Why is mine reading red?
Negative.
Oh, the negative.
Look at page 157. And look at page 158. And I want you to tell me if it's anything different and what is similar, what is same and what is different. The one page 57 and 158 is anything different in one case or in the other case.
It mentions
I don't want you to be fast. I want you to pay attention and see. For bank charges, mortgage points. This is the topic. The bank charges, mortgage points. Page 57 and 58 at the BMCC edition. Chapter 5. $145 and $146 of the Lord's edition. Is anything different? That is the same on page 156 and 157, but there is different on page 158. Is anything different? 156, 57, and 156.57 versus 158. Is anything different? Hmm? The interest rate is 8% in both cases. The number of years is the same. And I want you to start paying attention what is happening.
Well,
No, it's not a good.
Okay, analyst, is any different? $157. How many periods do we have? 158. How many periods we have? 157. From which period we start counting?
From the beginning of the first period, from before the first period.
158. From what period we have?
It seems
So
like-
don't tell me that there is nothing different. There is something different.
Seems to be at
But
the
you're
end
still
of
paying the same.
So what do you have? On page 156 and 157, we have two rows for the first period, the starting point and the ending point. On page 158, I have one row for one period. Everything is at the ending point or at the starting point. And I want you to pay attention to little details like this. Is this clear? Yeah.
If the payment's the same though, what's the point? Because you're still paying $14,902.95 each year, right?
The reason that I mentioned to you is that I said something at the very beginning of the class. Don't trust anybody. Don't trust me, don't trust the books, don't trust the formulas. Use everything and then use your brain. And then, the first month of the class, I said from the book that there is a difference if you pay at the beginning of the period and if you pay at the end of the period. And I want you to know why there is a difference. And I want you to know what is the difference. And when I will ask you that question, although you will have the option to go to your notes and to your book, I would be looking at you and I will see the one that would give me an answer would know it, and the one who is going to look for the book does not know it. And what's going to happen to the person that does not know it is not going to get an A. May get something, but not an A, because it's losing time and it's losing confidence. Is this clear? I want you these 2 points to be used so you can figure out what is happening here. Is here anything wrong or not? Is here anything wrong? Or in other words, if I go to page 156, the first part, that I have 0 points. What is happening here? What do I need to do? I need to put my time period. But now I will put the time period here differently than the book. I would not start from 0. I will start from the first period. And as I will start from the first period, I will go and take what is in the previous period and add 1. And I will take it. I have a formula here. I mark that I have a formula here. And that formula goes for 10 periods. That formula goes for 10 periods. Clear? I do whatever I have in the book. What do I have? The first period. I borrow the money. I take that money here. This is at the beginning of the period or at the end of the period?
the beginning. Oh, well.
This is at the beginning of the period or at the end of the period? And the question is when you have to pay. Do you pay at the beginning of every next year or at the end of next year? If you go on to the formula that you calculate the payment, the formula allows you to specify if it's at the beginning of the period or if it's the end of the period or not.
The ending.
Good. I want you to go to the next cell and calculate the payment. Calculate the payment. Can you calculate the payment, specify that the payment is going to be at the beginning and at the end of the year? Do you have the option to do it? Good. You have the option to do it. You can go here to type, and when you're at type, you can put 0 or at 1. Go on and do it. In the previous case, you didn't put anything, right? Here I want you to do exactly the opposite. Victor is questioning this. I want you to do exactly the opposite. What do I want you to do? I want to take the rate. I want to take the number of the periods. I want you not to make the mistake that Victor did before. You borrow that money, that means that you pay, I give it to you. And when I go to the type, it says, if it is 0, is omitted. That's at the end of the period. If I put 1, is at the beginning of the period. If I put 1 here, is at the beginning of the period. If I put 0, is at the end of the period. If I have it here, and I go on, and I put 0, is at the end of the period. The end of the period and the beginning of the period. Did we talk about that before? Yes. Can I ask you that for the test? Yes. Is any difference? Substantial difference. How much is the difference? This is what I want to know. The difference is a little bit more than $1,000. Do you want that $1,000 to be in your pocket or in my pocket? The businessman there said he wants to keep that money to do business. If he wants to keep that money and do business, he may make the choice to have a payment of $13,799, not $14,979. Is this clear? And my question before I go further is, if I have to ask the question, is it fair, one way or the other, or it's irrelevant? Okay, Kenya says it's fair. Can you prove it to me? The only way you can prove it is if the money that you get and the money that you pay is exactly the same. But there is a difference of $1,000 every year. Do we see it here? In both cases, you get exactly the same amount of money. And don't tell me that I asked you something that it's not in the book, like last semester my student said, Professor, you asked me something that it's not in the book. How? It's not in the book. We calculated. So what is happening? These two payments are calculated if the payment is at the beginning of the period or at the end of the period. What do I do? Give me 1 second. What do I do? I go on and I take the payment. And as I take the payment, I want to drag it down. I lock it, so I will lock the rows. And I will take that payment, and that would be what I pay. I'll make it negative. I'll take that payment, and I will do the same thing for the other case. And I will go through all the way down. So what do I have here? I have two parallel cases. I go to the previous chapter. What is a net present value? What is net present value? And finance is a subject that builds upon previous knowledge. It's not that we learn what we learn in chapter 2 and we forget it to go to chapter 3. In chapter 3 we need everything from chapter 2. Did we do something about net present value? Or in the previous test, did I ask you to calculate the net present value? And when you calculate the net present value, do you calculate it only in one way or in more than one way? Good. And if you calculate it more than one way, I want to know how many different ways you have to calculate the net present value. And in Africa you have 3. And if you have it in Africa 3, everywhere goes according to Africa. So if you have it, I would like you to calculate. Do you get the net present value? What is the net present value? And I want you to have that and calculate the net present value. This is what you pay, and this is what you get. This is what you get, and this is what you pay. In one case you pay at the beginning of the period, in the other case you pay at the end of the period. Which is right and which is wrong? I want you to do homework. Go home, take your book, go to the previous chapters, and bring whatever you know up to here and tell me what is happening. What is in the book? What is in the book? This payment here is at the beginning of the period or at the end? The modifier is what? The modifier is what? This payment here is at the beginning of the period or at the end? The modifier is what?
At the end.
The modifier makes a difference. That's $1,000 every period. $1,000 that based upon how you see it. How do you see it? The businessman wants this $1,000 to be in his pocket because he wants to use it to make money. And I gave him the loan. Do I want that money or I don't? Then why do I agree that he can keep it? And this is my test to know if you know and you're comfortable with the material that you gave me so far. So what I do is I want to tell me, use anything you want from the book. Go to the previous chapter about present values, net present values. Do we know where the net present values are calculated? Do we know how to calculate the net present value? Do we know how to calculate the net present value? Okay, where do we calculate the net present value? Do we know where the net present value is calculated? Page 73 calculates the net present value. Page 25 calculates the net present value. Page 77 gives me calculation. You told me that I can calculate it 3 different ways. Not every page gives it 3 different ways, but there is one page that gives you 3 different ways. There is one page that gives you 3 different ways that you will calculate the net present value. Did you mark these 3 different ways for the net present value? Okay. You have your mind. That's why you are different. I want everybody to use the mind. And I want you to calculate the net present value in 3 different ways. I have the numbers here. Can you calculate? Who is going to come to the computer here and do it? Okay, I can wait. Let's see what you are doing in your computers. Okay, go on and do it with my computer. Yes. What do you get wrong? But I didn't do it. I put it once and then I drag it.
Why does the other value change then? Or what, 800,000 here, right?
Okay, put 100,000 there.
So, like, you just go up.
Yeah. Correct. Because this one takes that sum. So you need to put the formula in the right area. Do I ask anything different or anything that we do not understand? Okay, I want to go on and graph the net present value. What is my net present value? I want to graph the net present value here. What is my net present value? May I graph it? May I graph my net present value? What do I have here? I have a period of 10 years. And I have a rate of 8%. I don't change anything. What do I change? I have $100,000 in both cases. I have $100,000 in both cases. But as I have $100,000 in both cases, with 8% and 10 years, I want to graph it. What is the difference? In one case, that I pay at the end of the year, I pay $14,000, $902.95. Once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What do I pay at the end of the year? Clear? And then, if I pay at the beginning of the year, what do I do? At the beginning of the year, how many times I will pay? 10. At the beginning of the year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is anything different? If I pay at the beginning of the year, I will pay, if I pay at the beginning of the year, I will pay $13,799.03. Clear? Is anything different? At the 10th year here, I pay nothing. Here I have a payment, here I don't. Do I have that as a graph and as an Excel file in my previous chapters? And in the first year, I pay nothing here. I pay at the end of the period. But if I pay at the beginning of the period, I pay something here. Which means what? In this case, as the year comes, I would get that money, but automatically I will give my first payment, which means I will not have $100,000 in my pocket because instantly I will do my first payment. Is this clear? And because I will get less money, in the future I will pay less because the payments are at the beginning of the period, not at the end of the period. Do I make the same amount of payments? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, they make the same amount. In both ways, I paid $100,000, but I paid differently. For the same periods and the same rate, I pay them differently. What's the difference? I pay the beginning of the year, not at the end of the year. What is the specific period? If I pay at the beginning of the period, the first period, as soon as I get that amount of money, I make a payment. Which means I get less money available for me. Because of that, I will pay less throughout all the periods. Did we do that before?
Yeah.
We did that before. If we did that before, then I pay less. What's happening at the end? This part is exactly the same. These parts are exactly the same. The flows of these are exactly the same. What is happening if it's the payment at the beginning of the period, at the end of the period? The only thing that is different is what's happening in the first period and what's happening in the last period. What is happening in the last period here? I have no payment to make in this case. I have a payment to make here because I pay at the beginning of the period. As a result, it is going to be different. Forget the beginning and the end of the period, although that's a significant difference. I'll ask that in your final exam. Give me 1 second. I want to know how much I will pay. I want to calculate the total amount of my loan. This is my loan. What do I need to have? I need to calculate the present value of this future flow. How to calculate the present value of this future flow? I will put it in that particular case. And if I do that, I need certain things to be fixed and not change, and other things to be able to change. And I'll ask Victor to come here and tell me which one I will keep fixed and which one I will change. And I'm not saying it in Greek. What do I need to have it fixed?
Fix, the number of periods.
No,
The rate.
these are changing.
Oh, the rate, yes.
The rate is going to be fixed. The number of periods would be variable. If this is K, this is $12,000. I need to mark it. So I will see exactly what is happening. This is $12,000. $12,000 equal to what? It's going to be my final exam question. $12,000 is equal to what? 12,776 and 88 cents is equal to what? Is it equal to something else? Yeah, it's the payment. Is it equal to what else? I want you to mark what questions I will ask. I take this and I want to drag it. I don't go all the way down, I do it only once. Why do I do it only once? Because I want to test it. I see what is happening. What is happening is the number is less. I go on and I click it to see, do I take the right information? And I take information. The payment that is here. And this payment that is at the third year, the question is it at the beginning of the period or at the end of the year? For this rate and 3 years, today is this amount of value. I go on. If I'm comfortable and I click OK. And if from here I'm okay and here I'm okay, nothing changes, I go on all the way here. And I see what is going on. This is the present value of $1,400 with 8% after 10 years. Did we learn the present values and the future values in chapter 2? If we digested what we learned, we can move on. Usually people don't digest. But if people digest, then this is what it is. And I have a question. What are these values that I have here? Can you, in plain English, explain what is this yellow area? Yes? Where are you from? Queens or Brooklyn? Good. In Brooklyn you have an answer and the answer is good. The first bank in New York metropolitan area was in Brooklyn. You go on and see it, it's still there. The architecture is Greek. It looks like a Parthenon. I want you to give me a picture. And in Brooklyn, because they're good in finance, they said that these are the present values of the fixed payment that you have to make. And I want her to go on and explain to her grandmother, not to mother, to grandmother. And she will say, because in 10 years, if you give me now $6,000, this $6,000 would be more than double in 10 years. They're going to be $14,900. Clear? And if I take the amount of the loan that I have, I want to see what is going to happen if I go and I sum up all these value. I go and I sum up all this value. If I click OK here, what number do I get in Africa? How much that would be? How much that would be? Yeah. Supposed to be what? supposed to be 0. He's right. If whatever I pay in today's value that I pay in the future is exactly the same what I get today, should be 0. I don't trust him until I click OK. Is it 0 or not? Do we see this value somewhere else?
At the beginning of the period.
I guess if we do it at the beginning.
Do we see that somewhere else? Do you see this number?
Yes.
So you see this number here. And now we have whatever it's not in the book. What is this number? And I want to go on and scrutinize my book. I want to go on and scrutinize my book. What do I have? I'm on page 130. What? 130. 130 what? 130, 146, 147, 156, 157, or 158. I'm on page 156, 157, or 158. And I'm discussing with you mistakes that people did in the past. What is the difference with whatever I have here and whatever we have in the book? What is the difference with whatever I have here and whatever I have in the book? Look on page 156. What do you have on page 156? 156. Look at page 156. What do I have on page 156? Look on page 157. What do I have on page 157? And look on page 158. What do I have on page 158? And I asked you a question before. Is anything different? Is anything different? And I was talking with Professor Beninga to have things standardized in his new edition. Unfortunately, he died. We didn't make a change here. The young guy who is the co-author is a young guy, doesn't have the experience, didn't pay attention to what is happening. Is anything different or not? Is anything different or not? What do you mean you don't know? You look at how many years you have. You start from 0, 1, 2, 3. You start from 0, 1, 2, 3. You flip the page, you start from 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay, that, yeah.
So there is a difference. How do I fix it? How do I fix it? If I do it like this, as I follow what is happening on 158, I have a problem. How do I fix it? Is any way I can fix it? I have two options. One to go to Brooklyn, the other to go to Africa. Where do you want me to go? To Pakistan, or to Bangladesh, or to India? Hmm? Why I don't want to go? Let me go to Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast, right? Let me go to Ivory Coast. Do you know what is Ivory Coast? Do you know what is Ivory Coast? It's in Africa, but where in Africa? North, south, east, west. Next to Ivory Coast is Liberia or Senegal. So, guys, I want you to be informed. Forget only the books. So what do I want to do? I will do things again. How I will do things again? I take the first year. The first year I get this amount of money. I take the first year. The first year at the end of the year, I make this payment. The payment that I make it is for 10 years. How many payments I make? 10 payments. The payment is the same. I get 10 payments. 10 payments for 10 years. Is any difference in my Excel? What do I have here? Credits and debits from one finance, or debits and credits. I get and I pay. Clear? Double system in accounting. This is what I get. This is what I pay. When do I pay? At the beginning of the period or at the end of the period? What?
End of the period.
I pay at the end of the period. If I pay at the beginning of the period, I will make things differently. But if I make things differently, the numbers may be different, but I need to know exactly what is happening. If I have this case, what do I need to do? I want you to go to chapter 4 and calculate everything according to what she said before. What she said. It's up here. It's up here. Do we know it? What did she say? There are in two different ways. One is on page that I can use the formulas. One is the page that I can use the formulas, and the other is the page that I would not use the formulas. Page 128 and 129. Do you have pages 128 and 129 in front of you? Two different ways to calculate what is happening. Page 128, 129. What do you want to do? I want you to do it both. I will do it as it is on page 128. What do I have here? What is my total payment? Then from the total payment, I need to calculate how much it goes for interest. How much it goes for interest? The amount that I have the principal multiplied to what is the interest rate. Is this $8,000? This is what I have. But the payment is 14. How much goes against the principal? Against the principal goes the difference. From the 14, but now I need to turn it into positive, minus what I pay for interest. Do I pay $6,902? Yes. What do I need to do then? From the principal, how much is not paid? Means how much is not paid. This is how much is not paid. What do I want you to do? I want you to go to chapter 5 and validate whatever you have in chapter 5 with whatever you have in chapter 4. Is it exactly the same information? It is. How much is the principal the next period? As much it was the remain from the previous before. Is anything here staying fixed? Yeah, the rate stays fixed. The rate stays fixed. If the rate stays fixed, everything else is movable. I want to take it and go on and see. Do I get the information here? What do? I take what I have on page 128 128, I have $100,000 for 8%, and for given period, 10 years. I take it into that particular case I have here. Is anything different from the second year to the 10th year? Or it's the same? If it's all the same, if it is the same, I don't need to do anything else. I'll take it and bring it all the way to the end. Is my loan paid? Yeah, at the end I don't have anything. Is this a fair deal? Here, I found $13,000 that I need to explain, and why that is a mistake. I want to do exactly the same thing here now. I want to see what is the present value of a future payment after given periods. I take it and I put 1 plus the rate. The rate stays the same. The periods are different, and I have them here. What do I have? What do I have? What time do we finish?
We done. Yeah, we're supposed to be done.
Oh, we go downstairs?
We're supposed to be done at 45.
Okay, good. I'll let them go. I have this number and I drag it down. I take all these numbers and I sum them up. I take all these numbers and I sum them up. Did I pay fully? I paid it. I save it at my desktop, and today is the 10th, the 29th. It's not valid.
Oh, you have to use that dash.
10/29, and I'm done.
You're gonna send us that one?
Close. Hmm?
Can you send us that one?
I can send you that.
Please.
Professor,
Yes, sir.
I have a similar.